A powerful 7.4 magnitude earthquake has left a growing trail of death and destruction across western Colombia. As rescue teams enter a third day of searching, the official toll remains difficult to reconcile, and new survivors are still being found. As of early Wednesday, August 12th, Colombia's national government had confirmed at least 181 deaths. The same national update listed 2,595 people injured and 195 people officially reported missing. A later bulletin from Asocapitales, the association representing Colombia's capital cities, listed 190 deaths and 1,679 injuries. Meanwhile, Reuters, using separate reports from affected cities and regional authorities, placed the death toll at 254. These figures come from different reporting systems, geographic areas, and reporting times. They should not be added together. In this report, the national government's figures come first. Later bulletins and media compilations are identified separately. Colombia's national government, city administrations, hospitals, rescue agencies, and forensic authorities are still reconciling their records. Some locations have not completed damage assessments, while communication with remote communities remains difficult or impossible. That means every number in this developing disaster should be treated as a snapshot from a specific moment, not a final total. President Abelardo de la Espriella reported that 1,136 homes had been destroyed. Another 8,357 homes had been damaged, while 48 buildings had collapsed, and 807 educational facilities were affected. A later Asocapitales bulletin reported 243 collapsed structures across the cities included in its survey. Because the two reports use different geographic coverage and structural categories, those totals must also remain separate. The national government's update did not provide a complete city-by-city casualty table, so regional figures must be identified by source. Separate local reports compiled by Reuters show Pereira and Cali as the two hardest-hit cities by documented deaths. As of Tuesday morning, Reuters counted 101 deaths in Pereira and 95 in Cali. Together, those two cities represented 196 of the 254 deaths in Reuters' local compilation. Pereira, the capital of Risaralda in Colombia's coffee region, appears to have suffered the heaviest documented loss of life, along with major building collapses. Cali, the capital of Valle del Cauca, is the other principal urban disaster zone, with collapsed apartment buildings, damaged health facilities, and large rescue operations. Choco lies closest to the epicenter, but its true losses are less certain because remote indigenous and river communities remain difficult to reach. Damage has also been reported in Quibdó, Manizales, Armenia, and smaller coffee region communities, but comparable verified local totals remain incomplete. The clearest picture right now is this. Pereira and Cali have the heaviest documented urban toll, while Choco faces the greatest uncertainty and access challenge. The earthquake struck at approximately 7:34 in the morning local time on August 10th near San José del Palmar in Colombia's Choco department. The Colombian Geological Service revised the event to magnitude 7.4 at a depth of approximately 96 kilometers, or about 60 miles. The earthquake was felt across a broad area, including major cities far from the epicentral region. Its depth helps explain that wide reach, but magnitude and depth alone do not determine the level of destruction. Local soil conditions, building age, structural design, construction quality, and compliance with seismic codes can dramatically change the outcome. Two neighborhoods separated by only a short distance can experience very different damage during the same earthquake. Beyond Pereira and Cali, serious damage has been reported in Choco and across Colombia's coffee-growing region in the Valle del Cauca. The pattern remains uneven. Major cities can report casualties faster, while isolated communities may remain uncounted for much longer. Videos shared from the disaster zone show walls cracking, exterior sections falling away, and clouds of dust filling crowded streets. At a medical clinic in Cali, patients and health workers were evacuated after serious structural damage was reported. Local reports said patients were moved to a temporary care area so treatment could continue outside the damaged facility. Scenes like this reveal a second layer of risk. An earthquake does not only injure people, it can also damage the systems needed to treat them. Hospitals, roads, water networks, electricity, communications, and emergency access routes can all become part of the disaster. Several regional airports suspended or restricted operations while authorities inspected runways, terminals, and supporting infrastructure. Commercial flights later resumed at Cali and Buenaventura, while restrictions remained at several other regional airports. Restoring transportation is critical because medical teams, relief supplies, and heavy rescue equipment must reach damaged areas quickly. The number of missing people remains one of the hardest figures to interpret. The national government officially listed 195 people as missing. Citizen-run databases, however, contained close to 4,000 reports. Those civilian entries are not equivalent to 4,000 confirmed missing people. The same person may appear on several websites or may already have been found while an older listing remains online. Some residents may be in shelters, may have lost their phones, or may be unable to contact relatives because communications have failed. The civilian databases reveal the enormous scale of fear and disrupted communication, but they should not replace the official count. For families, however, each unresolved name represents a private emergency, and every hour without contact brings greater uncertainty. Across the affected region, search crews have worked through the night with cranes, excavators, cutting tools, search dogs, cameras, and acoustic sensors. In unstable ruins, rescuers often remove debris by hand because heavy machinery can shift concrete and endanger people trapped below. Teams may call for complete silence, then listen for tapping, movement, or a human voice beneath layers of broken material. Search dogs can identify human scent, while small cameras can be inserted through narrow openings to inspect spaces rescuers cannot safely enter. Acoustic devices may detect faint vibrations, but every signal must be interpreted carefully because moving debris can create misleading sounds. Structural specialists continuously assess columns, floors, walls, and leaning sections before crews move deeper into a collapse zone. As the search entered its third day, an extraordinary rescue brought new hope to Colombia. 32-year-old Daniela Largo was pulled alive from the ruins of a collapsed building in Pereira after more than 35 hours. Her mother said the family had begun to lose hope before rescuers finally reached her. Daniela's survival followed the rescue of Diana Troncoso in Cali, who was also found alive after nearly 30 hours beneath a collapsed structure. Together, these rescues explain why emergency teams continue working even when the operation moves beyond the first full day. The widely discussed 72-hour window is not an absolute deadline for survival. Survival depends on injuries, temperature, access to water, air circulation, the size of a void, and the stability of surrounding debris. Some people survive far longer than 72 hours, while others with severe injuries may have only a much shorter window. The practical lesson is simple. Rescue teams must move quickly, but they must also work methodically enough to avoid causing another collapse. In Pereira, 16 people were stranded inside cabins on the megacable system after the earthquake interrupted operations. Rescue crews carried out a difficult operation at height and brought all 16 people down safely. The incident shows how an earthquake can disable transportation infrastructure even when the structure itself does not completely collapse. Power loss, automatic braking, damaged stations, or inspection requirements can leave passengers trapped until specialized teams arrive. More than 1,000 soldiers have been supporting security, access control, and emergency operations in Cali. Specialized military search and rescue personnel have also been deployed to priority sites alongside firefighters, civil defense teams, police, and medical workers. Local authorities said rescue teams were concentrating on the most heavily damaged locations and on structures where signs of life might remain. At the same time, residents have formed human chains to move rubble, carry water, distribute food, and support exhausted rescue workers. Images from Cali and Pereira show volunteers arriving with gloves, tools, bottled water, meals, and basic medical supplies. That solidarity has become one of the defining features of the response, but untrained volunteers also face serious danger near unstable buildings. Officials have repeatedly urged the public to keep rescue routes clear and to avoid entering damaged structures without authorization. In Cali, temporary traffic restrictions were expanded to help emergency vehicles and rescue teams move through the city. The measure may seem unrelated to the earthquake, but minutes lost in traffic can directly affect a rescue operation. Clear roads also allow ambulances to distribute patients across several medical facilities instead of overwhelming the nearest hospital. The Colombian Geological Service has documented more than 100 aftershocks since the main earthquake. The latest detailed bulletin counted 103 aftershocks, including 6 above magnitude 3 and 1 above magnitude 4. Most have been much weaker than the original earthquake, but even a moderate aftershock can destabilize an already damaged building. Aftershocks can dislodge debris, widen cracks, trigger partial collapses, and force rescuers to withdraw from dangerous search areas. They are a normal part of the fault system adjusting after a major rupture. They do not automatically mean a larger earthquake is coming. But they do mean damaged structures should be treated as unsafe until qualified engineers complete an inspection. One of the central scientific questions is why some areas experienced catastrophic collapse while others reported strong shaking but less structural damage. The first explanation is site amplification. Soft sediment can intensify shaking compared with nearby areas built on firmer ground or rock. The second explanation is resonance. A building can sway more strongly when its natural period lines up with the frequency of ground motion. The third explanation is structural vulnerability, including weak columns, irregular floor plans, heavy additions, poor materials, and unreinforced masonry. Older buildings may predate modern seismic standards, while newer buildings can still be vulnerable if codes were not properly followed. Damage can also concentrate on lower floors when large open spaces are used for parking or commercial entrances. Engineers call this a soft story condition because the lower level may be less stiff and less able to resist sideways motion. None of these explanations can be confirmed for a specific collapse without an on-site engineering investigation. But together they explain why earthquake magnitude alone cannot predict which building will fail. The disaster is especially difficult in Choco, the department closest to the earthquake source. Choco is one of Colombia's poorest regions, with dense rainforest, limited roads, and communities that may be reached only by river or aircraft. Damaged communications and difficult terrain can delay both casualty reports and the arrival of specialized help. Heavy equipment that can reach an urban collapse site by road may be impossible to move quickly into an isolated settlement. Rain, landslides, river conditions, and damaged bridges can create additional obstacles even after the shaking has stopped. This is why early national totals may understate conditions in remote areas and why later revisions can be substantial. International assistance is expanding, although Colombia has distinguished between humanitarian supplies and additional foreign rescue personnel. The United States committed $15.5 million for emergency shelter, food, protection programs, and damage assessments. Washington also activated a disaster assistance response team, commonly known as DART, to assess needs and coordinate the American response. DART is a coordination and assessment mechanism. It should not automatically be described as an elite urban rescue squad. The European Union announced another €2 million, or approximately $2.3 million, for severely affected communities. El Salvador said it would send 2 cargo aircraft carrying approximately 100 tons of humanitarian supplies. Mexico prepared a 255-member earthquake rescue contingent, along with medical supplies, food, and specialized equipment. However, that Mexican team remained on standby pending a formal request and authorization from the Colombian government. Reports claiming that the Mexican rescue team was already operating inside Colombia were therefore premature. The distinction matters because an offer of assistance, an approved deployment, and an operating team are 3 different stages. Colombia's immediate priorities remain search and rescue, emergency medical care, shelter, water, food, communications, and structural inspection. The next phase will include temporary housing, debris removal, school repairs, restoration of utilities, and long-term reconstruction. That recovery will take months or years, especially for families whose homes, businesses, records, and sources of income were destroyed. It will also require a transparent investigation into why some buildings collapsed and whether construction standards were followed. The lessons from those investigations can reduce losses in the next earthquake, but if only anything lead to enforcement and safer rebuilding. For now, the focus remains on the spaces beneath the rubble and the possibility that more people may still be alive. Daniela Largo and Diana Trincoso are reminders that even after many hours, a careful search can still bring someone home. They are also reminders that every confirmed statistic represents a person, a family, and a community suddenly changed. Colombia is still counting its losses, still searching for the missing, and still trying to reach communities cut off from help. The figures in this report reflect the latest verified updates available on Wednesday, August 12th, and may change as agencies continue their work. Because the emergency remains active, viewers should expect official totals to change as agencies continue reconciling their records. Until then, our thoughts remain with the people of Colombia, the families waiting for news, and the rescuers continuing their work.